I started watching your documentary today and I watched the first 45 minutes. So unfortunately, I cannot discuss all of it. But what I've seen there, I really enjoyed it because, first of all, the best thing I like there is the soldiers' humor when you were on positions there with artillery crew, how they were. How they were joking. Sometimes the jokes are silly, sometimes a bit stupid, but yeah, it's really funny. I really like it. I think you enjoyed it yourself after you were properly translated, most of them, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, like some of it I got from the implication. Just,
Uh-huh.
I could understand like 1 out of 10 words and I could make out the hand gesture and I get the idea of what's being said. But going back and reading transcripts sometimes is good fun because I'll get one joke missed too, and then I can catch up on it and get what they were saying. And I like their humor. I find it funny. I appreciate that they can talk so casually around me. I like being a fly on the wall in many of these
Mhm.
situations and just trying to observe the war as it happened. And so the more comfortable they are in front of the camera, the better. And I felt that for the majority of my documentary, everybody was very, very blunt. Everybody was very direct. Everybody was very honest.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the casual nature with which people welcome me into their embeds and into their positions. And without it, I wouldn't have been able to get this really good footage at a period where most journalists were not able to get into Pokrovsk at that point anymore.
Hmm. So let me ask you a question. Your documentary begins in 2024, somewhere in the beginning of the year, right? It's spring, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's July.
It's not spring, it's summer. Okay, July 2024. When does it end? Since I didn't watch it until the end, what's the last month of what year you're showing there?
Um, it ends this month. Well, last month, October. It ends with a Bogdana artillery team fighting on the outskirts of Pokrovsk, firing on advancing soldiers, trying to protect the flanks of the city. But
Hmm.
the last time I was in Pokrovsk itself, that was about 3 or 4 months ago. So,
Hmm.
it's getting into the city itself was extremely difficult 3 or 4 months ago. But in the last few months, the situation has continued to deteriorate until to the point where they have to do special operations redeployments just to hold the logistical lines into the city on foot, not just the like lines on car. I mean,
Yeah,
driving in and out right now is uh,
impossible. Yeah.
is is nearly impossible. Is essentially saying, you know what, I'll take my 50-50 chance. But walking in on foot is extremely dangerous.
How many kilometers did you have to walk there when when you got the last time there?
When I went in and out of Pokrovsk, we drove. But during those drives, there were multiple times we had to divert off the road on the way in. We had to park off the side of the road due to drones flying overhead. And on the way out, we had to drive, we had to park on the side of the road because of drones flying overhead. And that time flying out sucked because there was a building right behind us that was on fire. It was burning. And since it was burning, we kind of lit up a little bit in the night. We were
Mm.
more able to be seen, but we were able to get out just in time. We had 5 false starts on that evacuation. We would come up to the ground and be ready to get out, and they'd be like, "Never mind, there's too many drones," and it happened 5 times in a row. And so there's like an extra 6 hours of waiting
Mm.
just because we weren't able to get out due to just heavy presence of drones like 24/7 in Pokrovsk, dominating all sectors of public life.
Yeah, it's terrible how it is these days, and I think the situation, not only in Pokrovsk but in the front line in general, is just going to be getting worse in terms of logistics. In terms, for both sides, it's very hard. Not only for Ukrainian side right now, Russians logistics is suffering from our drone strikes. FPV drones are controlling the routes. And what Russians do to us, we also do to them. So this huge kill zone, which is getting wider and wider, like 20, 25 kilometers deep these days into each side is going to be just, getting wider, in my opinion, and deeper. And in a year, it's going to be easily 40 kilometers. Do you have another numbers in mind?
I mean, I can't tell you the exact number. There's there's research constantly going on. The factors that would by which the lethality increases is number one, range, how far it can go.
Hmm.
We've seen it go from 5, 6, 7 kilometers to 15, and then we're seeing 20. We're seeing tactics being used where you just don't throw the FPV drone, you attach it to a larger drone, and then once you fly to a certain distance, the FPV drone jumps off of that one with its own battery to go an even further distance to try to continue to find ways to extend the range. And then there's also the question of connectivity, which is making it so it's harder and harder to jam these drones. And fiber optic cables is the most clear evolution in that
Hmm.
technology. While it's not completely brand new, because a lot of like shoulder mounted munitions, like javelin type tech used to take out tanks, would use this type of wire in order to stop it from being jammed, because that was a real risk.
Hmm.
But to go the distances that they're going off of these fiber optic wires is extremely dangerous, and the connectability is completely unjammable. You can only cut the wire or shoot it down. Those are the only ways to get rid of a fiber optic drone. And the last thing to measure the lethality would be quantity, where the amount of drones, the quantity of drones. It's not just that, oh, there's one FPV drone we got to look out for. It's that
Hmm.
it constantly suppresses your movement.
Yeah.
It stops you from rotating. It constantly stops you from going out to like get ammunition or do X, Y, or Z. And if one FPV drone spots you, then within 30 seconds, another FPV drone could come to your position because there's so many in the air at any one time.
Hmm. Yep, it's a constant threat. So that's also one of the um, like ways that it progresses. It's not only the depths, but also the concentration of the drones. Now it's like, so yeah, there's a video from Pokrovsk posted on Instagram. One of the soldiers, he posted it. They're getting into the building and drones are flying next to them. I mean, exploding next to them, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it all happened in like, I don't know, 5 minutes. Even with all those cuts, you can see it's a short period of time. Yeah, the concentration of drones is getting bigger, and Russians, unfortunately, are also catching up with us. They are training more teams, they are using more drones, and they have more capabilities now than a year ago, and even, I would say, half a year ago. So, yep, Dylan.
Well, it's not just that. It's also that the pilots are getting better.
Hmm.
Of course there is a loss in knowledge when these FPV teams get targeted, and the Ukrainian armed forces is targeting explicitly FPV teams as high priority targets.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm hearing about the type of lessons that people are being taught in like drone schools about, who do you go after, who do you prioritize. I'm hearing about just from the people out in the field about the prioritization of these FPV teams. And when you've got, high quality Russian FPV teams like Rubicon operating
Hmm.
in your area, if you have any means to target that FPV team, you're going to do it. I mean, Rubicon alone is targeting like between 300 to 500 logistical trucks a month. I mean, that is a insane amount of damage to be able to do to Ukraine's logistics. And so these are going to be high priority targets. And these are people who have learned this experience through years of fighting. So for
Hmm.
every FPV team you take out, the survivors learn from it.
Yeah, yeah, you're totally right. So, actually, a lot of rollers in the chat already watched your documentary and they really enjoyed it. So, guys, don't forget to comment there. Don't forget to share it. That's the most important thing. Share it among your friends, family, colleagues, anyone who you think will watch it. Dylan, are you satisfied with the numbers right now? Number of views and yes, the statistics.
I mean, I would always like to see it do better. I would like to bring as much attention to it as possible. I mean,
Hmm.
Pokrovsk is actively being destroyed right now, and so, being able to show a little bit of the city and of the people before that, the lead up to it, how we got to this point, I think is important, because the way that this war is being talked about is very like there's not a lot of aperture, there's not a lot of depth, where
Hmm.
they're just seeing Pokrovsk burning, but people forget that the Russians were talking about taking Pokrovsk last winter.
Hmm.
When I was talking to Ukrainian soldiers last winter, you can hear the chatter of like, oh, the Russians want to take it by winter. I wonder if they're going to be able to take it before the train can be properly detonated, you know, the logistics, because then they can use it as a logistical hub. Now Pokrovsk is so destroyed that the idea of even using it as a logistical hub in any capacity, just like previous justifications for the long grueling battles for the defense of these cities, it's not possible anymore. So I remember when I was being asked by the BBC in like a prep interview for a radio interview for this documentary, they were like, you know, what's going on with Pokrovsk, like, you know, the logistics and stuff like that.
Hmm.
The It's just not a logistical hub anymore. And so the war has changed as it has progressed in a way where I think it's taking a step back and looking at the fighting over a year's span, which is what we do with the documentary, is useful to avoid the doomerism or the type of copium that people engage in just by looking at a snapshot. Either here's the amount of Russians that died in this, you
Hmm.
know, attack for this city. Was it really worth it for a 30 to 50,000 population city? Or on the other end, a city is falling, the end is near, et cetera, et cetera. I think it gives a better picture of the type of violence that a lot of Ukrainian cities, the cycle of violence that they've suffered.
Yeah. And what I also like to see in your documentary is the civilians and how hard it is for them, and what struggles they go through, you know, and also how other people put their lives on risk to save those civilians who refuse to go or who wait until the last moment. And these are not all the examples. A lot of civilians leave before it's too late, or before the last minute, before it is in danger in other people's lives. So yeah, the biggest percentage of civilians leave with the first danger or the second one. But those who stay, it's always, you know, a pretty complicated question, actually, especially if those people live there their whole lives for, you know, decades, and they are not young people. It's really hard for them to leave that place. And I just am not judging them. And you have another documentary about the evacuation with Dima that I watched, and many other people watched. So you explained that topic there perfectly. And basically, if you have something to add to this, please do.
I really focus a lot on civilians in this documentary. I make sure that we spend a lot of time not only following how the front line has advanced, but also how the people move. Because, I mean, ultimately, these cities are testaments to people. They're people's homes and towns and communities. And to have a war documentary where you don't show the people who are, you know, it's their community, it's their town. I mean, you're kind of just showing
Mhm.
it almost like it's the backdrop of a video game. You know, it's like, oh, here's where the action scenes are taking place. Here's where
Mhm.
you see the buildings burning and like the intense ambiance. Whereas if you know, show that this is what's at stake, then you have, again, better aperture, better context for what's going on. And so I understand that some of these conversations about how the majority of the people who are left at the front line are elderly, or how many elderly people are at these refugee centers with nowhere else to go because they don't have the pension in order to afford staying in a big metropolitan area. They don't have any family left. What do you do? This isn't like, you know, very energizing footage, but I think it's important for aperture. And so I try to do my best to include it as far as the algorithm will allow me. And so I really do care a bit about that. I do.
Yeah.
But as for the waiters, and for the people who stay behind because they're too poor, for the people who are too stubborn, for the people who are too drunk, for the people who are dodging the draft, I mean, there's so many different reasons as for why somebody stays on the front line. And so to look at somebody immediately like pop a judgment into your head, like there are people who fit general categories, and I've listed them before. People who don't have the money to leave, people who are too stubborn to leave because they've lived there their entire life, and now you're
Mhm.
telling somebody who's lived in the village and always the village that never mind, you leave the village, we have no clue when you're going to come back. People who you know, are dodging the draft, especially younger people
Yeah.
who think that if they leave, they'll go through a checkpoint and then they'll be put in like, general meat waves, meat brigade or something, which is the popular conception. There's going to be people who are just irresponsible drunkards, and there have been some pretty scary cases of definitely people with addiction problems with kids and children in frontline communities that, even though you're not allowed to harbor them in frontline communities anymore because of the danger. So I mean, there's all sorts of reasons, and of course, there's people who believe that if the Russians take over, that the violence will stop. Even though now we're hearing reports about conscription policy in occupied territory, and the fact that the war is still going on in occupied territory. The war is going on in Russia itself, as we're seeing from the long range drone campaign. So that's not exactly true, but there are people, of course, who support the occupation or support the idea that maybe the violence will stop if they take over. But that is such a small percent. I think sometimes people get a little distorted because at this point, 95% of the town's gone. 98% of the town's gone. You've got a small extreme that have actually decided they're going to sit through basically hell and try to make it through it. And so you already have like a disjointed, sample size. And even of that sample size in places like Kupiansk, that's going to be like what, 30%, 40%. And it's still not a majority, but it's a sizable portion of a small extreme of what was once the community.
Yeah. It's horrible what they go through and how Russians destroy our towns and cities and villages to the ground, and especially after the street fighting, takes place, and those towns, they are not livable anymore. You just don't have any infrastructure there. You don't have the houses themselves. And unfortunately, some people don't understand that when Russians come occupy your town, it's not really a life there, especially if nothing is left of that town.
Or when I was on the Lipsy axis, it was bomb mission, bomb mission, bomb mission, bomb mission. And I would see these guys take these bombs the size of a fat beagle, load them on under these vampire machines, Baba Yagas, whatever you want. They vaguely, whether they're an agricultural drone that have been retrofitted or something that has been custom made, they generally all work the same, whether they're dropping like an old anti-tank mine or retrofitted bomb, dropping it onto your position and smashing whatever dugout is in the night. And these things kill so many people during these nighttime operations. But
occupiers.
Another word, a type of person, as which is scarier than if they were not people, in my opinion. It's I've always felt that way, but they do them during day operation, these bombing missions, and they kill a lot of people. Not only do they bust up the trenches, they destroy a lot of the ammunition storage, and they've been used more to stop Russian assaults. That leads with a higher rate of loss, since they're using them during daytime operations. I've seen these teams lose them before, but it also means they can put more firepower on the enemy. But recently, I've seen it go from 20% to 40% to sometimes like roughly 50% or a majority of these teams' operations are logistical work. And that means taking water bottles, wrapping them in empty water bottles so it doesn't explode upon impact, flying it over your allied position, and dropping water to people who don't want to have rotate in order to get supplies to their position. I mean, I see a lot of people can tell me if this is controversial. I don't think this is controversial. I see a lot of celebration about those guys who lasted 165 days on position. I don't know if you saw the story of these men with very big beards, very, very, I would say they look like they're my grandfather's age. They look like they're elderly.
They might be 40 years old, I guess.
But the conditions of the war makes it look like they're about to enter their 60s. Whether or not they're in their 40s or it's their 60s, it's actually impossible to tell. And they got certificates, like really fun paper certificates that I'm sure that they'll go home and brag to their wife and children about many years from now. But when I see that and I see the celebration of it, I do think that these people obviously have done something that is a tremendous feat of human will
Yeah.
That should be talked about only in that context when referencing what they have contributed personally. But to celebrate 165 days as a way of fighting a war, stuff like that is only possible because of this type of logistical warfare.
Yeah.
And these guys couldn't have even achieved these superhuman feats of will if it wasn't for this type of drone support that is now possible. Those guys wouldn't have been able to achieve it if it wasn't for these drones. Should this even be the situation in the first place? No, but those guys wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for these types of
Yep.
drone resupply missions. And so for this type of horrific hellscape of minimized movement and living underground, which is modern warfare, these types of drones are, I mean, they're angel wings. They're literally delivering the water and food that otherwise would not be able to go out there, because who's going to want to make that mission down to drive to southern Pokrovsk right now? Those positions to the south, which are just wide open farm fields with like 3 kilometers separating Russian positions on both sides. It's only going to be drones that can make the ride until they find some way out of there.
Basically, Russians are already like they're in the northern Pokrovsk right now. So the south of Pokrovsk is already a gray zone where Ukrainian and Russian positions are mixed, and there's no whole front line these days. And to deliver basically something to the positions of our guys that is already in the rear of the Russians, only these saviors. So basically, angel wings. They are bringing it. So you need to realize that it's not just a killing machine. This is a saving machine these days. It all began only like bombing, but these days in the time where logistic with trucks is impossible, this is the only thing that can save lives of the soldiers. Bringing them water, bringing them food. Unfortunately, 156 days is not the longest time. I heard about, it's not confirmed, but something more than 250 days. People are on positions, and I know that in some brigades and some units, they already have a rule to not hold them in positions shortly. They already have a rule to stay on positions for 30, 60 days. It's like it's becoming a rule because they don't want to lose those people, and they keep them on positions to just keep them alive, because whenever they got out of positions to be rotated, there's a huge chance that they will be killed by Russian drones. So the situation is on one hand is terrible and horrible. On the other hand, this is the reality of the modern war, where drones are controlling almost 100% of the space, and they're on the front line, and there's not much you can do. Yeah, of course you can use shotgun, and it's effective against the drones, but you gotta be fearless. You gotta be a badass to aim a drone flying up to you, aimed at shotgun, and actually hit it. You also need to be, a bullseye. You need to be,
and you gotta hope that there's not 2 drones. I mean,
exactly at the same time.
It's not as simple as like you could be the best shot in the world, but if there's like 8 drones coming towards your position, it's like, well, like, good luck. Okay, it's not just a question of like, because at every point in this war, when Ukrainians and Russians have generally had a fair fight, the Ukrainians end up winning. But you cannot expect somebody to do what is physically impossible. And so as like heroic as somebody can be with a shotgun, they need other tools at their disposal. That's why you need layered defenses. You need drone nets on top of drone jamming systems, on top of people operating shotguns, patrolling popular routes, on top of layered armor for your armored vehicles. On top, like these are things that on top of anti-drone, like net dropping drones, the drones that go around the front dropping nets on, night bombing drone. You need multi-layers if you want to survive in this modern battle space when you have less manpower than the largest country on the planet.
Yep. That's a complicated situation for us, mostly, because when the opposing side doesn't care, I mean Russian occupiers, they don't care about their personnel at all. Human life is, is worthless there. So they will send as many of them as needed to occupy our territory. We cannot afford that because, first of all, life is valued here. Unfortunately, there are also examples where when it's not valued, really, in some brigades and battalions, and but the problem is, well, even that is not like a very common thing, that the life is not valued. There are a lot of good units where life is valued, so we just cannot fight like Russians just because we don't have enough men in our country. We have barely, 28 million people living in Ukraine right now. And with the latest beautiful bills, big beautiful bills, like letting our men from 18 to 22 years old to leave the country freely. Germany just reported that in the last 2 months they have a shelter request from 100,000 men of that category. 100,000 men were just let out of the country when this happened. And okay, this is unrelated topic anyway, because we were talking about about the fact that it's mostly hard for us, for our side, because we have different approaches. And that means when we value the life of our soldiers, we need to take 2x, 3x more measures to prevent them from being hit by an FPV drone. So that is a huge resource, and a huge, not just a resource, just imagine how much human resource you need to put into this to build all those net covers of the roads all over Donetsk Oblast. Just one oblast. Let's take just one oblast.
I mean, you have the people who are actually doing the physical labor, and it's, you put up one pole, you put up another pole on the other side, and then you hang the nets over it, and then there you go. You got like 4 or 5 feet. Then you move on to the next pole, and you have to do this down all the major highways. And that's, and again, as the ranges increase, the demand for this is going to increase all across the front line. It's not just 5 kilometers, it's 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers, 20 kilometers. Obviously, it is most intense near the line of contact, where there's going to be the most military vehicles, therefore the most Russian drones navigating to try to find them. But if you're talking about possibilities of strikes 30, 40 kilometers out, ideally you would have drone nets 30, 40, hell, 10 kilometers out in advance in case there is, say, a breakthrough for a week that advances 5 kilometers. You should be prepared for that scenario. Mm-hmm. But we're just talking about covering the range that they have now, not the idea of getting prepared for the possibility of advances in the future. But it has to be layered on top of other stuff, because the drone nets in and of itself is not enough. The shelling tears through the drone nets. It gets completely torn through. I was on the Konstantinivka axis recently. I'm filming a documentary on the Konstantinivka front next. It's going to be the next major city I document getting attacked by the Russian army. And the closer you get to the city, 50% of the drone nets are just torn through by artillery and mortars.
Yeah, and enemy drones can just then easily get into that hole and fly up on the road and just sit on the road like a mine and wait in ambush for an approaching vehicle. And they don't care if it's a civilian vehicle or basically, like, all Ukrainian vehicles are a legitimate target for them, because they need to occupy the territory at any cost, and they don't care who they will kill on their way. Right, Dylan? Is it something that you can agree with?
It depends on the individual Russian soldier, which is scary, because in Kherson, it's just about the Russian drone pilots there are probably the worst than anywhere in the country. Just constantly striking civilian vehicles, constantly striking aid workers, striking firefighters, and then posting on social media that firefighters are priority because they're going to do like firefighting at critical points of infrastructure. I mean, they're very open and braggadocious about it. I've seen them war crime aid workers in Kherson and then lie about it. They do it all the time. As for the the Russian drone pilots on the Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka axis. It really depends on the individual drone pilot. I know one aid worker that has been hit 3 times by Russian drones, and then on one occasion he stepped out of his aid vehicle. He waved his hand at the Russian drones, his arms in the sky, like yelling aid worker," and the drone flew away. Now, whether that was that pilot's personal, like, I just don't want to murder this old elderly aid worker in cold blood. This doesn't help me. I'm here for $2,000, not nightmares. That, like, then whether it's that or it's like some military decision, or it's not a priority as much on that area, I do not know. But a lot of times it will come to the individual drone pilot, because that same aid worker a week later will get hit by an FPV pilot from a totally different Russian drone pilot of a different philosophy.
Yeah, totally right. And it's, what I noticed in Russian propaganda, in their brainwash of their population, what they make them believe is that we are all like bad people. And it's easy, like, just remember Nazi Germany, how they convinced that every other race, they convinced their population that every other race is just like doesn't deserve to live or get what they get, and they just, yeah. So it's a mass hysteria, and most of the times when they kill civilians, they're like, that is just a Ukrainian Nazi patriot. So they would anyway, like, let's say, rat on us when we occupy them. Why shouldn't we just get rid of them? So it's like just generally making them hate all the Ukrainians, make it easy for them. So they really sometimes think, and that's what I see in the interviews with POWs. Many times they think that they're really doing the right thing, like killing civilians. Why not? Because, they're all bad, evil banderites, and we are just making it better for the world. That's what is in their heads many times.
It's hard to understand if it depends on the individual case, whether it's somebody who has been convinced by Russian propaganda that this is truly the way by which to win the war. If these are soldiers who are doing it out of personal sadism, if these are soldiers that are doing it out of personal anger due to losses in their unit. If you're in the Russian army,
Yeah,
it's the Russian army is not a stranger to losses. And so if you have friends in your unit who got, like, for example, when you talk about the Bucha massacre, what preluded the Bucha massacre was the soldiers that ended up doing it getting absolutely torn to pieces relative to what they thought they were going to do, which was have a military parade.
mm-hmm.
And so by the time they got to Bucha, they had many reasons to be angry. They had ammunition shortages. They had, problems and confusion about being, where they are, getting ambushed constantly, many losses. And so I could say that, if you tuned on Russian state TV and they were calling everybody Nazis and like justifying these types of actions, can that lead to that? Yes, but it's also the pressure cooker of all these different environmental factors,
Mm-hmm.
which will make a man start to twitch. And when a man starts to twitch, these types of prejudices become lethal. And so these types of environmental propaganda factors can have less than desirable results. But these environmental factors can also produce these outcomes without, I think, those types of propaganda factors. Maybe not to the same scale, maybe not with the same flavor, but this warfare brings out the worst of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have, I'll just say, negative desires in the first place, it's going to bring out even worse in people.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a thing of many factors, and especially when they're taking heavy losses and not living in comfortable conditions, they may always find someone to just get their anger on, just like put it all on some people and feel better as they think, but they won't feel better. It just doesn't work like this. We should address this. It's from Gen Consensus. Why can't the Ukrainian military force civilians to leave an active battle zone? It's dangerous to the soldiers too, but my understanding is Ukrainian constitution states government can't force them. Dylan, do you have an answer for this question?
I mean, there are instances where they force evacuations, but these instances are usually restricted by certain criteria. For example, in Konstantinivka, children are not allowed to be in the city. You're not allowed to be in the city, period, if you're in Konstantinivka. Now, when I was in Konstantinivka a few weeks ago, children were still being evacuated out of the city because some parents hide their children in the city. Now, the one instance that I did find, it was two parents who engaged in the sin of consumption in large quantities, and their children were running around while they were boozing. So that was a situation where obviously the kids had to be evacuated. Aid workers found out about it, and they basically told the parents, "We are evacuating the kids. This is not a conversation. We'll get the cops here if we need to." And thankfully, they got the children out of that situation. So in that instance, children can be forcefully evacuated. In some areas of Kherson, which obviously doesn't have the same conditions of Konstantinivka, but faces, of course, the constant drone threat. When I was there in Kherson about a week, it was about a week ago, the Grad rockets were just striking all over the city. It was very haphazard. I watched the Russian footage that they put out afterwards, and a third of the rockets they fired at the city fell short in the river. Not even an attempt for accuracy when trying to hit a military target. So in Kherson, there's certain districts that are restricted from children as well. But when it comes to telling a pensioner in her village home on the front line to leave, there's a question about the resources to actually go and force her. What are you going to do? You're going to send soldiers out with guns, and they're going to say, "Okay, you're being forcefully evacuated."
Cops. You can try. This could be cops with pistols too.
Yeah, you can send cops with pistols, and this is what they do when they evacuate the dead and when they get the children evacuated. But when it comes to a lot of the elderly and civilians, that authority does not currently exist, and the resources are not in place, and so it is voluntary. Now, and for most instances, it isn't a problem because 98% of the population does not desire to live on Grad Rocket Street, and they would much rather live anywhere else. But for the 2% of the population that would rather live on Grad Rocket Street, once the question to evacuate comes, there's certain restrictions because of the rights of the people there.
Yeah. If you don't have the means, no problem. Share it with your friends.
What exactly is the fund going towards?
A car for the 26th Artillery Brigade is the current fundraiser.
They need trucks every month. They lose so many trucks. A lot of these trucks, it's a question of, a guy wants to have the ability to jump out of a truck if a drone's running towards it, and they know that they can get in a new truck. But with the quantity of trucks that are being lost, a lot of these volunteer donation chats are really the only, donations, volunteer, fundraiser streams are the only way that these people can get new vehicles, just due to the high amount of losses. So it's a really important cause for the soldiers on the front line.